Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Air Canada apologizes to a disabled Prince George man after staff told him to drag himself off a flight.
Without us saying anything, a lot of people are afraid to.
While another BC passenger says he was dropped trying to leave his plane.
They weren't listening to anything we said.
Plus, where to park.
It's about your own human dignity as well. If you are working on the long haul and you don't have space to park, to rest, you don't want to do that work.
Surrey wants to find more land for semi-truck drivers to put their rigs. And yes, she is coming to Vancouver.
She's smart, she's witty, she's beautiful.
The city's gonna be popping for those 3 days, that's for sure.
Swifties rejoice as Taylor Swift announces 3 shows at BC Place next year.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Air Canada has now apologized to a disabled BC man after staff told him to drag himself off his landed flight. The airline now admits it violated disability regulations. As John Hernandez reports, the passenger hopes others who have had similar experiences will speak out like he did and spark change.
In fact, I didn't expect it to go this big.
It's been a whirlwind week for Prince George's Rodney Hodgins after he went public with an experience he called dehumanizing.
I felt humiliated.
Hodgins, who has spastic cerebral palsy and uses a motorized wheelchair, was on a flight from Vancouver to Las Vegas in late August. Usually, staff will help people with disabilities off the plane, but this time, they didn't.
How am I supposed to get to the front of the plane? I can't walk.
Staff told Hodgins and his wife that they had to get to the front of the plane without their help.
I hauled myself over the seats. I was grabbing onto the seats. She was on the floor moving my legs. Then I got to the end and I couldn't go anymore because there was nothing for me to hang on to.
The story made international headlines and ignited this back and forth inside the House of Commons.
Under the Liberals' watch, Air Canada has been allowed to mistreat Canadians while making billions in profits.
Mr. Speaker, I was horrified to learn how Rodney Hodgins was treated by Air Canada.
They actually used his name. So that was very impactful.
In the days since, an outpouring of support and stories from others who have endured similar struggles.
Without us saying anything, a lot of people are afraid to.
On top of that, this week Air Canada apologized via email, saying we have to regrettably admit that Air Canada was in violation of the disability regulations. It offered both of them coupons worth $1,000 each. But Rodney wants something else.
I want you to stick whatever you were going to give me back into your company to develop a program to make people with disabilities have an easier time traveling with your airline.
Canada's transportation agency is investigating the incident, while Rodney hopes his story will encourage others to speak out. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
We are also learning more about a second incident involving Air Canada and a person who uses a wheelchair. A BC comedian who lives with cerebral palsy says he was dropped and injured while trying to exit his flight. As Michelle Gassoub reports, he's now calling for the airline to improve its training to keep all passengers safe. And a warning for you, this story contains images some people may find distressing.
I've never taken a step in my life, which is ironic because I'm a stand-up comedian that's never stood up.
As a comedian with spastic quad cerebral palsy, Ryan Lachance tries to find the fun in any situation. But a recent experience flying home from a comedy festival left him in pain and angry. Upon landing in Vancouver, an Air Canada crew declined to fetch the ego lift he needs to get out of his seat, and instead insisted on lifting him themselves.
And they kept saying, "Oh no, we got this, we got this." And they kept trying to lift me up and put me in the aisle chair, and I'm a big guy, and those aisle chairs aren't very big, so like my legs wouldn't fit on.
I'm stuck myself. You're stuck. Hold it.
His care assistant told the crew 4 times Lachance needed the ego lift, then watched in horror as he was dropped on the ground, landing hard. She started filming.
2, 3.
The guy holding his leg pulled, and Ryan just flew off the seat, landed on his butt, hurt his hip more, and got some bruising. I looked at the flight attendants for some help, and they were just handing me gifts from first class to compensate for the poor behavior that was being displayed in front of me. They literally said, "I'm giving you this so that you don't hate us."
It took Lachance an hour and a half to get off the plane. He was bedridden for 3 days after the accident. When Lachance filed a formal complaint, the airline offered him $500 in flight credits. In a statement to the CBC, Air Canada said, "This customer did not receive the level of service we normally provide. We are in communication with him in order to resolve this matter to his satisfaction."
I know that this happens to people all the time, and I just wanted to be another voice for the people that didn't think they could have a voice. I just want this to change. The equipment's available, the processes are available to teach their staff on how to do this all correctly, so just take the time and do it.
Lachance has said the experience has made him nervous to fly, but he'll keep traveling to perform in comedy shows and won't stop advocating for others to feel safe. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
The city of Surrey is looking to shift gears when dealing with truck traffic. It's searching for land that could be turned into semi-parking spots, saying they're short 2,000 spaces. And as Liam Britton reports, truckers also want more amenities.
Gurdeep Sandhu says he's not looking to live like a baller, but for about 85% of the year, this is his crib.
Hi, Gurdeep Sandhu. Welcome to my truck. We got a refrigerator here, we got a microwave, dash cam, satellite.
He's been long-haul trucking for 24 years across North America, but he says even living minimally is tough when facilities for workers like rest stops, showers, and places to sleep are few and far between in the Lower Mainland.
Or we have to be sleeping before entering the city, like 100 miles before we entering the city. That's the biggest problem. Then we have to deal with the traffic, and we can't even go to the appointment time.
Perhaps rarest of all in BC is affordable monthly truck parking.
Actually, Alberta and Manitoba is very reasonable, $100. With trailer, they charge only $200, and here is $700. It's like 3 times, more expensive.
The industry says it's a poor reflection of what they can offer, especially to prospective workers who are badly needed to keep trade moving.
End of the day, it's about your own human dignity as well. If you are working on the long haul and you don't have space to park, to rest, you don't want to do that work.
But the city of Surrey wants to do something about it. Council has told staff to seek out city land that could be used as truck parking and find proponents to lease and operate truck parking facilities with it.
Industrial land is where you park trucks, and industrial land is some of the most expensive land that we have. It's $5, $6, $7 million an acre. When you're parking 21 to 25 trucks per acre, it economically does not make sense. That's why the city needs to step up.
Bain says it will be good for truckers and the community.
There is just no space for them to go. So they're forced to park in rest areas. They're forced to park in residential communities. They're forced to park in their own driveways on agricultural land. And this puts them right up against homes, families, and children. And this is where we're seeing a huge problem.
But the industry says the problem goes well beyond Surrey. With so much truck traffic flowing east from Pacific ports, there's a need for the provincial government to address the problem across BC. The transportation minister says rubber is hitting the road on the issue, including a new truck stop in Surrey opening in weeks.
That'll provide 110 new stalls in state-of-the-art facilities with showers, lighting, electrified stalls, all of that good stuff.
So when it comes to truck parking lots, the industry says there aren't exactly, well, lots. And they say unless multiple levels of government step up to resolve this problem, workers and the economy could be stalled. Liam Britton, CBC News, Surrey.
Mounties say a fake report of a kidnapping has led to a huge drug bust at a North Vancouver warehouse.
The warehouse appears to have been set of a drug trafficking lab where drugs were stored, prepared, packaged to be shipped and sold on the streets.
Police said they received a report on Halloween of a man kidnapped at gunpoint at the warehouse. When they got there, officers say they seized several kilos of marijuana and illicit psilocybin, also known as magic mushrooms. 2 men from Surrey are now facing trafficking charges. Police add nothing suggests someone was actually kidnapped, and the allegation may have been used to get officers to the warehouse. A BC provincial court judge has now released video of a 2017 arrest that seriously injured a suspect and led to assault charges being laid against 3 Vancouver police officers. A warning some people may find parts of this video upsetting. It was captured by surveillance cameras at the commercial Broadway SkyTrain station. It shows VPD constables Brandon Blue and Bo Spencer, as well as now retired constable Gregory Jackson, punching and kneeing David Cowie. Court has heard at the time of that arrest, Cowie was suspected of obstruction and theft from a parkade and was fleeing from police. He suffered 4 broken ribs and a collapsed lung. The trial is scheduled to resume in December. It is a neighborhood of some 15,000 people that hopes to see its population double in the coming years, but it doesn't have a mayor nor a council. So if you don't like how your neighborhood is changing, there's little you can do about it. Justin McElroy now on the peculiarities facing the residents of UBC.
The University of British Columbia. It's a place with a college campus, a nudist beach, and an entire small town with virtually no democracy.
I have no decision-making power.
That is Jen McCutcheon, the Electoral Area Aid Director for Metro Vancouver. People who live at UBC vote for her to represent them. But she and the rest of Metro Vancouver have no oversight for what happens on campus. Over the last 40 years, UBC has developed its non-academic lands into a city with around 15,000 permanent residents. They get food at Save-On, bank at TD, and deal with cranes and construction like the rest of us. But unlike other highly populated areas in the rest of Canada, those residents don't have a mayor and council with direct control over what gets built.
We are advisors to the UBC Board of Governors, and we interact with campus community and planning. But in almost all cases, especially, well, in all cases when it comes to land use planning, our power is 0.
That is Richard Watson, chair of the University Neighborhoods Association, directly elected by UBC residents. And they are upset about UBC's big update to its land use plan, where a public hearing is scheduled next week. Now, currently, UBC has about 5 main residential neighborhoods. Their new plan looks to add 4 more neighborhoods, which the university expects will double its campus population. Now, in a city, staff put forward a land use plan, the public gives feedback, and the mayor and council vote on it. At UBC, staff put forward a land use plan, the public gives feedback, but it's a board of governors voting on it. And this is different because in a municipality, a mayor and council are directly elected by those local residents. So if the residents don't like the land use plan that's approved, they can vote them out of office. At UBC, though, the Board of Governors is mostly appointed by the provincial government. So if local residents don't like the land use plan, well, tough. The UNA has asked for the plan to have more rental housing and green space and a climate action plan. And because UBC is the permanent developer and owner of all the land, they could make that happen. So why aren't they?
It feels like it's all about the money.
You might think that's unfair, but even UBC partly admits that's the case. They have a nearly $3 billion endowment, much of which has come from the development of their own city, where new homes are sold on 99-year leases. And in their own document about this land use plan, they say UBC must grapple with the implications and tensions inherent in a financial model that perpetuates a cycle of growth and development to support its needs.
Their mandate is to have an endowment that can support an academic institution, and they need to have an endowment there. It's just that is completely disconnected from how a municipality would work.
Now, you could argue there are benefits to this plan. UBC can be centrally developed without short-term political considerations designed to placate the whims of the masses. But it's not like everything goes smoothly as a result, though. A basketball court can be rejected for mysterious reasons. A pot shop next to campus gets approved by politicians from Delta and Port Coquitlam because of how strange the areas outside of UBC are regulated. A SkyTrain line hasn't been built, in part because mayors think UBC is selfish. And despite having total control of the land, students are forced to sleep on floor lounges sometimes, and condos are rented out for $4,000 a month. But will anything change? Unlikely. UBC declined to respond to the UNA's criticism, defending accountability by saying the buck stops with the province. And the province said despite concerns by the UNA and Metro Vancouver, they have no plans for a governance review. And as for the local MLA, well, he's one of the 15,000 people who live at UBC, and he's quite fond of the new restaurants. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
Swifties, brace yourselves. After much anticipation, Taylor Swift is finally bringing her Eras Tour to Vancouver. Fans here have been pleading for shows since the summer when Swift announced she would play Toronto next November, the only Canadian city her tour was planned for. Now she's slated to play 3 dates at BC Place in December of next year. Maurice Katz went out to hear from fans and others.
Taylor Swift's Eras Tour is coming to Vancouver for 3 nights next year. Let's see what people have to say. Hear about the news about Taylor Swift?
I did. I'm so excited. I'm going to try to get tickets.
What makes you a Taylor Swift fan?
I've been listening to her since I was like kindergarten, so I know like a lot of her songs.
Her concerts literally changed the economy in the U.S., so I think her coming to Canada would be great for Canada. So, Tay, you know, if you're coming, you know, I'll be the Romeo to your Juliet. Wait, I have a girlfriend.
Not excited at all.
Really?
No, Beyonce should come back.
She's smart, she's witty, she's beautiful. More than just an artist, she's a businesswoman and an inspiration and a leader.
3 concert dates for next year in Vancouver.
I'm glad you told me because now I can get on the list.
So you're excited?
100%, yeah.
I'd say I'm pretty excited, but my hopes are kind of like within bounds because I feel like nobody gets a registration link.
Yeah, and then resale tickets are...
Oh, disgusting.
3 concerts in Vancouver next year.
I think it's not enough.
Really?
Yeah, I think she's going to sell out of all of them within 20 seconds as soon as they go up, and hopefully I'll be able to get a ticket. 2, 1 for my sister.
You're not my homeland anymore. Yeah, it's that one. It's a different thing now. Yeah.
Look at you go. Look at
Let's
you go. Taylor Swift coming to Vancouver.
I work in clubs, so it's going to bring a lot of people out to clubs. I'm going to get a lot of song requests, for real. Girls love breakup songs, man.
So ticket registration is open till this Saturday, and then you can buy your tickets on November 9th if you're planning to go. Maurice Katz, CBC News, Vancouver.
To other news now, numbers suggest there are more homes for sale in Greater Vancouver than there are buyers. The Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver says an increase in newly listed properties is giving more choices to some home buyers across Metro Vancouver, but sales remain below long-term averages. The board says home sales last month totaled just under 2,000. That's a 3% increase compared to recorded sales during October of last year. But last month's total was still almost 30% below the 10-year seasonal average. As temperatures drop, community groups in the downtown east side are calling on the city and province to urgently help people without homes.
I hope they'll do stuff, and all of their own studies show it's cheaper to house people than keep them on the street, so that should be good motivation.
Those groups have released 9 recommendations aimed at housing people during the winter. They include opening up more shelter beds and extending leases for modular housing developments. Advocates say they did 90 interviews over the past year with community groups and those facing homelessness.
The stories we heard ranged from the deep sense of community and solidarity that people have built down here to the soul-crushing reality of persevering through long lines and complicated housing applications, only to be put on a multi-year waiting list and have to battle to survive in the process.
The most recent homelessness count shows more than 4,800 people identify as homeless around Metro Vancouver. A salmon hatchery in Port Moody says it has struggled to raise coho this year. They say they're having trouble keeping water flowing to support their hatchery, and it's not just the drought that's to blame.
My name's Dave Benny. I've been volunteering for the Port Moody Ecological Society for 30 years. I teach school classes and environmental education to students coming through. This is we call our duck pond. So the kids all get a sieve and they all look for aquatic insects all along the edge of this pond here. Our hatchery raises coho salmon, and we usually get about 15,000 a year. And then we raise them and we'll spread them out to another creek in the south of Port Moody's. Why salmon are important? Because it's like a species that feeds everything. We've had a bear in here eating our fish and there's carcasses. Well, it becomes fish fertilizer for the forest. There's all sorts of other wildlife depend on salmon to get them through the winter. That protein, that rich nutrients. The drought this year has been really hard because the creek's really low because it's all subdivision up on the hillside up here. The water goes on the roofs, on the driveways, and goes down the storm systems and into the creek like right now. Instead of soaking into the ground and taking weeks to soak out, now it's down the creek and gone, so we don't get a steady flow anymore. We have a side channel up here, we call our side channel. Normally we had lots of water to feed it, and it was never a problem. But this year we're having troubles keeping it flowing. We've got salmon in there spawning, keeping water in our coho pond, which is here behind me. It has between 8,000 and 10,000 coho frying it right now, and being able to operate the hatchery. Incubation room takes constant flow of water in there, and then we have tanks with fish, adult fish sitting in them right now. So trying to balance that water out and then the water's dropping is kind of the challenge, big challenge right now for us. Ultimate goal would be we wouldn't have to have this, the fish could come back normally, but it's such urban impact and it's so drastically changed the system. I don't know if we'll ever be able to have it this natural again.
Amazing to see coho and other fish right in the urban centers, eh?
It is, yeah. And a good reminder of even though the drought situation, we've been talking about it for ages now, but it's hard to see some of those impacts directly. But it's a good reminder that we are still in those conditions and we are still feeling the impacts of them even as we do start to improve. Now, this is way better than we were even just a month ago, but we did worsen a little bit compared to our update last week. We just, on the for parts of the Sunshine Coast and the North Coast, we've moved up a level or two, depending on where you're looking. 1 for the Sunshine Coast, 2 for the North Coast. So it's not by far, it's not the worst jump that we've had, but it is a reminder that we do need more continuous precipitation because we were in such a severe drought condition. Now, the coast is going to get a decent amount of precipitation. So this is the next 24 hours. This is some of the lighter stuff. It's overnight Friday into Saturday that we see that next system really start to roll through. And you can see on the island, this is one of the more dramatic models. It is sort of the higher end of what we might expect. But regardless, you do see some places expected to get up to close to 100 millimeters, no matter what model you look at. So definitely expect a pretty wet weekend because that will continue right through. Now, across the province tonight, you can expect to see some scattered showers and potentially some snow, but it'll be isolated and short-lived if we do see it, and just a few things popping up. But besides that, we get a little bit of rain, and then we start to clear up for tomorrow morning.
Okay, something to look forward to. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Latin American communities in Vancouver celebrated Dia de Muertos, or Day of the Dead, this week. It's a tradition to commemorate family and friends who have died. Today, a parade hit the streets of the downtown east side.
Basically, was the idea that our ancestors come back to eat with us, to be with us on this day. So we do altars, as you can see here. We put pictures of them in the altar, food, decorations, and many other things that they liked.
Yesterday, the community celebrated All Saints' Day, the Guatemalan version of Day of the Dead.
We normally go to the cemetery and visit the ones that have passed away.
I think our traditions ultimately come down to being with family, you know, remembering our loved ones.
I like that I can put up food and their pictures and the flowers.
Organizers say the events are significant as it brings people from various Latin American countries together, allowing them to feel at home and close to their loved ones.
You know what, even that they're far, they can still feel they're connected. I think that's the response, that they bring their friends, and I think that's some of the things that Latin Vancouver trying to always solve, is how we can help people to adapt, but also, you know, integrate and share.
Organizers say about 5,000 people took part in the events. This is the 5th year of the celebration in Vancouver. Call it a deep dive into orcas, how one famous whale helped change the conversation on conservation. That's in our live interview next. hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. Thanks for being here. A recent report says 1 in 10 seniors in Nova Scotia are living in poverty. Some Cape Breton residents, 65 and older, say money is getting tighter every year, but they're making it work somehow with the support of family and friends. Erin Potty shares some of their stories.
Mary Fury is not where she thought she'd be at 70 years old. After working all her life, she's now living with her son because she could no longer afford home repairs.
I realized that I had to put on a new step, and I just couldn't afford to do it. So I knew then that the only choice I had was to sell the house because I couldn't keep up. I couldn't keep it up.
Fury is a member of the Reserve Mines Seniors Club. She and her friends there are in the same boat. They're trying to get by with what little they have.
Well, I would have loved to stay in there until I died or sickness, whatever made me leave it, right? Because I always said I didn't want to be a burden to anyone.
Some Nova Scotia seniors say they're not sure where they'd be without the help of others.
I'd be out on the road, I guess. I don't know. Would have been hard.
Elsie Ellsworth is used to hard times. She raised 6 children, and things got really tough after losing her husband to a heart attack 33 years ago. Right now, she says her family is keeping her afloat.
You got to be careful of your money. You got to look after it. And they make sure I have spent the money and that. They make sure I get all right. I was good to my kids, and they were good to me.
Mariette Pond quit her job years ago after her husband lost his arm in a Cape Breton mine. Today, she says things are particularly tough.
Right now, we're trying to get a heat pump and not having any success with it, you know. You just turn your oil down a little bit, put on another sweater.
A recent report by Food Banks Canada found that nearly 1 in 10 of Nova Scotia's seniors are living in poverty, and that the rate of poverty for that group is roughly 2/3 higher in Nova Scotia than the national average. The report recommends the province update its poverty reduction strategy with a particular focus placed on people over age 65. A local advocate says any improvements should involve feedback from seniors themselves.
We can't make decisions on helping people out of poverty, helping people stay away from food banks without talking to those people themselves and find out what their needs really are.
The Nova Scotia government says it has a number of programs in place to help seniors, but it recognizes there's more to do. Van Gorder and the other seniors say it's sometimes difficult to access funding that could help them. They suggest the province change the way that people aged 65 and over can access those funds. Erin Potty, CBC News, Reserve Mines.
It is Throwback Thursday, which is time to take a deep dive into our archives. The world-famous killer whale Scana was part of the first pod of orcas captured, and the second killer whale brought to the Vancouver Aquarium on March 20th, 1967. Scana brought in thousands of visitors, becoming one of the biggest attractions at the center. This is a piece remembering Scana after she died.
She was one of our biggest, certainly one of our most lovable attractions. The 18-year-old mammal was an integral part of Vancouver life. Over the years, she collected thousands of friends, young and old alike, who came to watch her perform or simply swim regally in her aquarium home. Scana's welfare has been very much a public affair. Even her name, an Indian word meaning killer whale, was picked after a citywide contest. So it was natural that when she sickened 2 weeks ago with an infection in her reproductive tract, letters and phone calls flooded in. But Scana failed to improve. She refused to eat and didn't respond to daily injections of antibiotics. She died early this morning as 2 vets and curator Gil Hewitt stood by.
Scana's been with us for 13 years now, for more than 13 years. So you get to know her and you get to respect her and you get to love her. And you know, it is like losing, you know, somebody that you care, a human being that you care very much for.
With her great bulk hoisted onto a van, Scana made her final long ride through her Stanley Park home. She had been there since March 1967, when the aquarium bought her from the operator of the boat show. It was the longest time ever that a killer whale had survived in captivity. Aquarium staff asked that the doors not be opened until noon Sunday out of respect for Scana. It was only then that members of the public learned with a shock that their big, gentle friend was dead.
Oh, it's sad. Because we used to watch the whale show.
That's really too bad.
Really sad.
Curator Hewitt describes Scana's illness as mysterious. Until the results of the autopsy are in, no one will quite know for sure why she died. Behind her, Scana leaves her buddy Hayek, the teenager killer whale. And for many Vancouver folk, a lot of delightful memories.
We're now joined by Chloe Robinson, the director of the Whales Initiative at Oceanwise. Chloe, thanks for joining us. Scana, first of all, is considered a, quote, world-famous killer whale who changed how we think about the conservation of cetaceans. Why was she so pivotal?
So Scana was so pivotal for this because she really helped people to engage and fall in love with killer whales. So killer whales were typically seen through the eyes of fear and seen as this vermin in the environment that regularly shot at, actually, for fun because they thought they were stealing their fish. And actually, Scana helped people overcome this fear and fall in love with killer whales.
We've come a long way since keeping cetaceans in captivity, certainly. How have attitudes around the captivity of whales particularly changed over the years? And I remember seeing some of that footage of when they would, in fact, drag orcas through the water to try and get them into aquariums. It was pretty brutal.
Yeah, very brutal indeed. This was, again, back in the realm of time when killer whales were very feared. And through captivity, we really learned how social, how intelligent, and how emotional these animals are, and how unethical it actually really is to be keeping them in captivity. We cannot really cater to their natural needs in a tank, essentially. And we only knew this through actually keeping whales in captivity. And really this has seen a shift towards this captive look at their science and what we can learn from them, really into the wild populations, what we can learn from those via all the different technologies we have at hand now, cameras and drones and other methods.
Is it a bit ironic, though, that it took capturing them and keeping them in aquariums that we learned all these wonderful things about them?
Oh, yes, most definitely. It's a shame and it's heartbreaking to think of those whales that were kept in captivity, even those that still remain in captivity, when we know now how damaging it can be, both mentally and physically on them. And I'm sure throughout the pandemic, we are a lot more, we empathize more. We know what quarantine and being stuck in our houses is like now. And imagine that being your life. And that's essentially the case for these whales.
So we've moved beyond a lot of aquariums keeping whales in captivity. What are some of Oceanwise's whale initiatives now?
So Oceanwise, within the Whales Initiative, we actually have two pillars where we conduct our work. We have one pillar which involves our 20-year-plus citizen science network that send real-time sightings to that then get sent into alerts to aware large commercial vessels such as cargo ships of a whale's presence to avoid ship strike. And then we also work on cetacean health and monitoring. So we use drones, we use DNA monitoring, photo ID to monitor populations of killer whales, humpback whales across our BC coast and beyond to help deliver these conservation solutions to help tackle the current threats such as ocean pollution, underwater noise, ship strikes and lack of prey that our whale populations face today.
Chloe Robinson, Director of the Whales Initiative at Oceanwise, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Foreign nationals trickle into Egypt from Gaza as Israel's airstrikes and ground assaults intensify. Why some experts are wondering about the outcome of those attacks after this.
One after another, residents of the University Endowment Lands cast ballots in a vote to decide their community's future. The question, whether or not to incorporate.
Incorporation has been a question out here for quite a long time, and it's basically how best to preserve the status quo.
The status quo is this. The area has no local government. The 2,700 people who live here pay taxes to the province, which administers services such as zoning and garbage collection. It's been this way for years, and some see no reason to change it.
Say that it's been quite pleasant not to have neighbors fighting against neighbors and signs on lawns and midnight phone calls and all the things that probably come your way with municipal elections. And
some no voters also fear incorporation will mean higher taxes and less community control over local issues. But the yes side says the pluses of incorporation are obvious.
We would have complete management of our tax base, whereas at the present time our taxes are paid to Victoria, and they may or may not come back to us. A mayor and council that was elected from the municipality with a mandate to speak for the people who live here would have much greater strength.
Joan Dick discounts that argument, especially in relation to influencing land use decisions around UBC.
It's not likely that a small municipality could, in fact, influence the university. I'm sure they'll be very interested to hear what we have to say, but the fact of the matter is that we have no claim to the land that they would be developing. And so
an incorporated UEL would be larger, expanded to include Hampton Place, a development eventually expected to house 1,500 people. A no vote would maintain the current size and administration of the area, but would leave other possible options open for the future. Karen Mason, CBC News, Vancouver.
The crossing out of Gaza into Egypt was open for a second day, allowing foreign nationals to head home and at least some of the critically injured to receive more medical treatment. The CBC's Tom Perry has more from Cairo.
The evacuation continues. Civilians, foreign and dual nationals, all making their way out of Gaza to Egypt through the Rafah crossing. The latest list of roughly 600 people approved to leave includes citizens of more than a dozen countries. The biggest group on that list, with 400 names, the United States.
Unfortunately, I'm not even excited to leave Gaza because we have so many people that we love and care about. So right now I'm between ice and fire. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to see the family that I left behind or the friends that I left behind. People are dying. Everybody's dying. Nobody's safe. We don't have bomb shelters.
For those who didn't make the list, frustration. I want to pass, says this Egyptian woman. We're not animals. I have Egyptian rights. No Canadians were included on the list today. Canadian citizens trapped in Gaza still waiting to see when they can leave, with some facing a difficult choice.
Hello.
Mohammed.
Hello.
Mohammed, is that you? It's
Hi,
Tom. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you too.
We reached Mohammed Al Hussein on a shaky phone line in Gaza where communication is crumbling.
The amount of destruction is unbelievable, and we just want this to stop.
Al-Hussein is Canadian, married to a Palestinian. Their 2 daughters hold Canadian citizenship, but his sisters and elderly parents do not.
They told me they're pretty sure they won't be able to get them out. But the thing is that I really can't get out without my parents.
He's weighing whether to stay or go.
So I'm in a very difficult situation at the moment. I'm not sure who to leave behind.
The Canadian embassy in Egypt says it doesn't comment on individuals, that it works on a case-by-case basis. Canada's ambassador says he hopes to see Canadian names on that list to get out of Gaza very soon. Tom Perry, CBC News, Cairo.
With Israel's ground offensive progressing, some observers are wondering, what does the country hope to achieve with its campaign? As the CBC's Ellen Morrow reports, the strikes on Gaza are increasingly devastating for civilians. And a warning, this report does include details of violence and injury that some viewers may find disturbing.
Every day, the Israeli military releases videos like these. Its troops, military officials say, pushing further in, now starting to operate in Gaza City itself. Israel says it's killed dozens of Hamas leaders in its advance, but the toll on Gaza civilians is climbing too. The Hamas-run health ministry says more than 9,000 people have been killed. This was the aftermath of a strike near a UN school turned shelter. The UN says 4 of its shelters were damaged by airstrikes in the last day. "We did nothing wrong," this little boy cries. "We did nothing wrong." But cries for help here go unanswered. This is as close as most foreign journalists can get to the fighting. A hilltop in southern Israel.
That's Gaza there behind me, less than 10 kilometers away. And from here, every few minutes, we hear the boom of artillery fire. You can hear planes overhead. We've heard airstrikes, heavy machine gun fire. And that all gives you the sense of the growing intensity of this Israeli offensive.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, flanked by soldiers, says we will advance and we will win. Israel says it wants to wipe out Hamas for the October 7th massacre of 1,400 Israelis. But what does winning look like?
We should also start thinking about the day after.
This analyst says Israel doesn't have a clear endgame.
Hamas in Gaza City will exist, maybe in a very limited manner, maybe much smaller organization, but of course it won't be vanished, and we in Israel should define those goals in a very realistic manner.
With the world's eyes on Gaza, there's growing unrest in the occupied West Bank. 4 Palestinians killed in clashes with Israeli troops overnight, and an Israeli motorist killed by a Palestinian gunman. There are fears of a second front with Hezbollah in the north, rockets fired from Lebanon landing in Israel. Tensions grow every day, and for the loved ones of the 242 hostages being held by Hamas, so does anxiety. Netanyahu says the ground offensive may help free the captives, but many fear it further endangers them.
For me, of course not. There's no military operation that I'm aware of that can free 240 hostages that are located in many different locations.
With the battle for Gaza City looming, the fiercest fighting is set to come. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump denied any knowledge of wrongdoing while testifying today in a New York fraud trial. Their father, former President Donald Trump, along with top executives of his organization, are accused of inflating the net worth of their family real estate company. The New York Attorney General alleges the overvalued financial documents helped the business secure loans and get better deals. Last month, Donald Trump's former lawyer and fixer testified that he used to direct them to exaggerate the value of his assets. The trial is expected to last through December. Coming up, some popular cosmetics are being put to the test as Ottawa could soon label chemicals found in everyday products as harmful.
Window, of course, we have shovels.
And then we have some more garden tools up here. So that's all there.
Syllaboys in Escazone sells grocery items, gasoline, and household supplies. 72-year-old Ben Syllaboy Jr. is the current owner. He took over from his late parents Ben and Nancy, who started the store in 1948. Before officially opening their business, the Mi'kmaq couple ran a taxi service at a time when few people in the area had vehicles. Customers without money could offer the Syllaboys a trade in exchange for a car ride.
The people who generally paid them with grocery items or something like that, you know, like a barter system. But after a while, they gathered so much grocery that, of course, we couldn't eat it all in our family. So they opened up a little store in front of the old house.
The home where the business first began is still standing, but over the years, Syllaboys expanded several times. The current building was constructed 10 years ago and includes everything from cans of soup, school supplies, and things to keep your car running smoothly. Several of the store's employees have been working at the shop for decades.
The best part working there is a friendship in here, in the store. It's just like a family.
Esmond Blue Marshall not only enjoys chatting with his colleagues, he also welcomes meeting people from all over Cape Breton.
When I start working here, I didn't know nobody like only in this community. But then when I start working here, I know people from Chenagady, Christmas Island, Northside, East Bay, Sydney, Big Pond, everywhere. Inverness. That's how we met people here.
Syllaboy Jr. has been working at the store for 50 years. In that time, he's watched generations of people start families and continue the tradition of shopping at the Syllaboy store.
Meeting people every day, seeing people every day, seeing my customers every day, near and far. You can't beat that. That's always so nice. It's like seeing your friends. It's like a big family.
Syllaboy Jr. says he's getting close to cutting back on his hours or even retiring. But he says even if he does move on, there are still plenty of people in the community who are capable of keeping the store going. Erin Potty, CBC News, Escazone.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Science and climate specialist Darius Madavi joins us now with the forecast. Before we get to ours, you've got a major storm hitting parts of Europe to tell us about.
Yes, so this is Storm Chiron. This is a very major storm, actually. We're seeing winds that are the same strength as a Category 3 hurricane, and the low pressure system at the center of the storm is also at the sort of low pressure you'd expect to see in a hurricane of that strength. So very unusual for this area. We have an extremely strong jet stream driven in part by the warm ocean and from the El Nino event half a world away. Both of those things together are bringing some extremely heavy winds, and the jet stream being further south than it usually is also means that those the warm temperatures are driving even further exacerbations to the storm. So you can see heavy rainfall coming to the northern parts of France and the southwestern parts of the United Kingdom. And those strong winds, we're talking up to gusts of up to 180, 190 kilometers per hour. So extremely high winds. Fortunately, the worst of it is past, but this is still very early in the season to have had the third named storm for the UK, and so we're expecting a continued extreme season over there. Meanwhile, over here, we don't have as severe a situation. The freezing rain warnings have all come down here in BC. Now, we can see that there was some snow happening up north just recently because the remnants of that system are still passing through the province. But most of the rain has fallen for the south coast, at least until we get into the next system that's going to be rolling through tomorrow night. You can see the worst of it this time is going to be hitting the northern part of the island versus the southern part that was most affected by this previous system. And as that rolls through, you can see by the evening it does make it here to the lower mainland. But across the south coast, we're going to be seeing some fairly significant rainfall, as we saw by the accumulation graph earlier, up close to 100 millimeters in some places, no matter what model you look at. Could be actually significantly more in other areas. And this system is actually going to come further up north than the last one did, meaning more snow in the north, whereas the last one was fairly confined to the more southern parts of the province. But regardless, temperatures are warmer than they were because of that warm Pacific air that's coming in, those clouds trapping that heat overnight. So these are our highs, but expect warmer lows than usual in the south as well over the next few days. And tomorrow our conditions are mostly cloudy with these sort of scattered showers and snowfalls throughout. But here in Vancouver, it's going to look a bit depressing. A lot of rain coming, but most days just some showers. Not anything too serious.
And remember, everybody, we're still in a drought.
We are.
Thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Dan.
Some chemicals found in everyday products could soon be labeled as harmful by the federal government. That includes some popular cosmetics. In a marketplace investigation, David Common put some well-known makeup products to the test.
In science, they're called PFAS. To others, forever chemicals, now connected to a greater risk of cancer and reproductive problems, but used for decades to make products water, grease, and stain resistant. From raincoats to pans, popcorn bags, dental floss, and more.
They're all persistent, highly persistent. They can last for decades, if not centuries.
When applied directly to the face in products like cosmetics, the exposure risk is increased.
Foundation, concealer, blush.
You use it all?
Yeah. Every single thing you possibly think of.
Our testing reveals that 5 of the 8 products contain PFAS. This MAC foundation and waterproof mascara, Marcel eyeliner and foundation, and Quo eyeshadow.
Wow. Have to find an alternative.
An industry group argues the levels found are low, while the companies tell us they don't use PFAS as an ingredient. So how'd they get there?
That means there's something that can be found that gets in through the manufacturing process.
This is not background levels. This is not just something that's found in drinking water, that there has to be something else in the process that's allowing these levels in.
Sources of contamination can include all of those things: water, piping, materials that you've used in other ingredients. They could be also in the packaging that you're using.
Canada's government is still deciding whether to classify all 12,000 types of PFAS as toxic to human health. Meanwhile, the U.S. state of Maine is demanding PFAS be out of consumer products by 2030.
These chemical corporations knew they were toxic
and is suing the chemical companies which made them.
My hope is that this is a wake-up call for anybody who may not have been paying attention to just how significant this kind of contamination can be.
A call being echoed by many in Canada's scientific community. David Common, CBC News, Toronto.
Using artificial intelligence to bring a half-finished Beatles song to fruition. We're going to look at now and then and how it was finally finished after this.
After a tumultuous time, Britney Spears is celebrating. Even before her new memoir was released, demand pushed it to the top of Amazon's bestseller list. And the competition on the shelf is fierce. The business of brand name biographies is booming.
Publishers are taking fewer risks. And so because they're taking fewer risks, I think they're more likely to publish celebrity memoirs because they're these slam dunks in their opinion.
Putting ghostwriters in high demand.
I would say it's definitely had an uptick in the last couple of years, for sure. Up to the point where I'm almost exclusively working on memoirs all the time.
But there are some risks.
For a lot of celebrities, that becomes a difficult choice, and it is the choice to write memoir, because what you have to do in order for that book to be successful is to reveal something that your fans don't already know.
This is Celebrity Memoir Book Club.
The co-hosts of a memoir podcast aren't surprised about the appetite.
And especially with the way stan culture has evolved, like people just want to know every single thing about people.
Which piles on the pressure for authors.
I love touring. It's the funnest part to me.
For Spears, who spent much of her adult life under a conservatorship, a memoir provides a chance to speak for herself. But this author says for women, there's still a double standard.
That they would talk about their pain and their trauma and all the kind of the trauma, the drama.
And then, when it comes to marketing,
women can spend pages and pages talking about their awards and their accomplishments, but still it always comes back to, you know, the sex, the scandal, the bombshell reveals.
And that's certainly been the case for books from Spears and Jada Pinkett Smith. But with the current actors' strike stretching on, it might not be a deterrent.
I think they fill that lull with, well, now it's time to write the memoir.
The next wave of books may already be underway. Eli Glaster, CBC News, Toronto.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. With the changes to how Canada is able to access journalism online and on social media, we want to assure you that when you're looking for CBC News, you'll always be able to find us. Wherever you are in BC, local news, breaking stories, and the latest from around the world is at your fingertips any time of the day with the free CBC News app and online at cbcnews.ca. For news you can trust, download the CBC News app and stay connected wherever you are.
John, Paul, George, and Ringo are back with a new song, and they're calling it the final Beatles track. Eli Glasner shows us how it was created with AI and what that could mean for the music industry.
This story of the aptly named Now and Then starts in New York City in the late 70s.
I know that John Lennon recorded it in the Dakota in 1979 on a cassette.
Oh, here we go.
What am I doing? There we go.
Beatles expert Piers Hemmingson says the song came from a demo tape.
Yoko gave the cassettes to, I think it was Paul, to listen to. And George, you know, they tried their best.
At the time, they managed to recreate 2 new songs. But Lennon's voice on Now and Then was unusable. Until now.
This is not a fake John Lennon created by a computer. This is the real John Lennon whose voice was basically buried in tape hiss and a wobbly piano on an old demo.
How'd they do it? Enter director Peter Jackson using the same AI technology that recovered audio for the Get Back documentary series. Producers created a crystal clear version of Lennon's voice. Add in new elements from Paul McCartney and Ringo's Starr, and the result is a new old Beatles song. Is it what John would have wanted? Hemmingson says the Beatles were always early adopters of technology.
They were always trying to move it ahead. So I think if they weren't happy with Now and Then in 1995, maybe now they're happy. And maybe the technology has caught up.
Although if they can do it with an old John Lennon demo, how about Prince, Kurt Cobain, Gordon Lightfoot?
This is going to really expand the art form of music and ultimately expand the business.
Not everyone is as excited.
But this thing of like releasing music after somebody has passed away or whatever, it's tricky, right? We saw this happen to Kurt Cobain a lot.
All right, there it is. Now and then, we got the song loaded up. Let's go see what people think.
At first it didn't sound like the Beatles, and then it sounded like the Beatles.
It sounds authentic. It sounds more like a John Lennon song than a Beatles song.
Is it as good as some of John's other stuff?
It is a nice song, but I do prefer his older stuff.
All right, Beatles fan from way back. What do you think?
Oh my God, it's beautiful.
Really? Oh, you're...
Yeah, I don't know why.
I guess the Beatles mean a lot to you.
Yeah, I guess they do.
Eli Glaster, CBC News, Toronto.
Thanks for joining us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch our newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, our website, cbc.ca/BC, and on YouTube whenever you like. Janella Hamilton will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Have a good night. See you tomorrow.